Symbolic History Through Sight and Sound, 20, Baroque Formulation. If Baroque is to signify a period style, that more or less of the 17th century, its character cannot be the faulted irregularity of the word's origin, whether from a strained syllogism or a lopsided pearl. We must deepen our search for its quality, at the same time allowing that no element, neither abandon nor control, tactile realism or ideal grandeur, space, radiance, chiaroscuro, or in music, monody, homophony, chromatics, can specify a style, but only the ethos-bearing configurations in which such moments are combined. It is by idea that we recognize date and name, as Guercino's Aurora, 1621, Monteverdi's Orfeo, 1607. Not only the space crowding and shadowed passion of this Guercino render it Baroque, since what it rivals, the 1610 Guido Reni, is of the same style horizon, and yet 2 centuries would extol its classical ordering, as richly formal, as voluptuously academic as the Parnassus Milton evokes at the close of Comus, 1634. To the ocean now I fly, and those happy climes that lie where day never shuts his eye, up in the broad fields of the sky. There I suck the liquid air, all amidst the gardens fair of Hesperus and his daughters 3 that sing about the golden tree. Along the crisped shades and boughs revels the spruce and jocund spring. The graces and the rosy-bosomed hours thither all their bounties bring, that there eternal summer dwells. And west winds with musky wing about the cedarn alleys fling nod, and cassio's balmy smells. Iris there with humid bow waters the odorous banks that blow flowers of more mingled hue than her purfled scarf can show, and drenches with Elysian dew. List, mortals, if your ears be true, beds of hyacinth and roses, where young Adonis oft reposes, waxing well of his deep wound in slumber soft, and on the ground sadly sits the Assyrian queen. A classic joy, complicit, as in the Orfeo or in Poussin's realm of Flora, with the ripe sob of grief. What these works share in light and calm, in shade and pathos, is the swell of heroic formulation, what stretches the Orfeo between flown recitative and figured bass.
Qual suon dolente il lieto ti perturba?
Indeed, a polar tension of the age we call Baroque, like every such spectrum blended in artists who seem opposed, sets on one side the balance taught by the eclectics, the 1603 Carracci Holy Family come to Egypt, like Monteverdi's Orpheus by Chiron's Baroque.
O say
All his life, Poussin would seek that dignity of landscape plains. Claude would suffuse its rural fact with Arcadian vision, while music from Monteverdi to the French Chambonnière, wake such strains as virtue does in Comus. At last a soft and solemn breathing sound rose like a steam of rich distilled perfumes, and stole upon the air, that even silence was took ere she was ware, and wished she might deny her nature, and be nevermore, still to be so displaced. I was all ear, and took in strains that might create a soul under the ribs of death. Against that measured tread, Caravaggio, by 1600, had forged the counterpole of tenebrist passion. But the same Orfeo which gave us classical parallels darkens to chromatic pain. The same Comus which twined Hesperian gardens anticipates the brooding vindication of paradise lost. But evil on itself shall back recoil and mix no more with goodness, when at last, gathered like scum and settled to itself, it shall be in eternal restless change, self-fed and self-consumed. If this fail, the pillared firmament is rottenness, and earth's base built on stubble. Already the prophet scourging the dark idolatries of alienated Judah, and Moloch, horrid king, besmeared with blood of human sacrifice. The deepening of that naturalism of light and shade, as it spreads from Caravaggio to the solemn pity of Rembrandt, does not alter whatever conscious formulation flexed the bow of the great Baroque. Pagan and Christian, south to north, runs one ground swell of mighty style, as when Monteverdi's operatic song sires the pietistic German of Heinrich Schütz. For you are my helper and my Savior, my God. In 6 centuries we have come from the symbolic calligraph of this storm on the Sea of Galilee, the boat of the world on the fallow waves, Fealu Vegas of Germanic wandering, Cynewulf. Anxious the struggle to bring our barks to land over the dire sea surges, the Son of God, our rescue. Here he sleeps in the presaged Leviathan of death and hell. While the sequences and tropes of 1000 contract all things to the dark age center of Gregorian voice and parallel melisma. same scene in Rembrandt confronts the new physics with the life imperative of Protestant will. Schütz, eile mich Gott zu erretten. Fleming has such a storm poem. Des Donners wilder Blitz schlug von sich manchen Stoß. The lightning from its cloud struck endless blows. Mortal men stood wan. The torn sky trembled, resounding to the crash. Earth under crumbled, sank below my feet. The cracked ground uprose to meet my fall. Yawned, tomb wide, to enclose my pilgrim days. I took to the sea, tumbled in rage, it swelled cliff high. My carrack humbled, broke mast, and split, and settled to its close. Before, behind, on all sides round was fear. Above destruction and beneath the grave, there was no mother's son to help or save. And yet I was unbowed, thought life as dear, nor fled impending death, or when or where, safe in the arms of my Redeemer's care. Within the shorter span, set Veronica's napkin, Rhenish, early 15th century, and the Christ Laissant from Dufay's First Mass. Against Fetti's handling about 1620, with the Crucifixus from Carissimi's Mass for 5 and 9. So Marino's Adorne asserts the primacy of the tactile. Every other sense can be deluded by false objects. This one only is true, faithful minister and father of delights. The others possess parts of the body. Touch extends its power through the whole, and in universal act seizes on all things. No wonder the turn to Baroque was once assigned to Michelangelo. But the transpersonal might of his Renaissance ingathering is far from the conscious rhetoric of the century of Rubens or of Milton's blind touch. In darkness and with dangers compassed round and solitude, yet not alone while thou visitst my slumbers nightly, or when morn purples the east. The spatial filling in of the symbolic is not confined to the art history of the West. The whole current of the later world may have run that way, as in the Japanese garden refinements of the Buddha. To pass from this 1425 Persian representation of Jonah as flat as Gothic to the adventures of the Book of Kings 100 years later is to parallel the Italian Renaissance, as Gentile Bellini's sketch of a Turkish artist might remind us, in touch with the Muslim East. But only Europe goes from thinness and ideality. Already in 14th century Ars Nova and Simone Martini exploring later modalities. Through a dynamic crisis, both symbolic and physical, so Victoria and El Greco. to an odd volitional command, as causally flexed as the moments of a Newtonian force array. So the tragedies of Corneille turn on heroic obligation, family against king, love against honor, as when the Cid discovers in the insulter of his father the father of his love, misérable vengeur d'une juste querelle. Whichever way fierce anguish follows me, I draw the sword of pain to seek, alas, the father of Chimene. Frescobaldi's recitative plucks the reflective chords of the viscera. At the center of the change lies the validating subjectivity of the infinite self, as much a point of departure for Rembrandt, 1629, as for Descartes' wonderful science, its 1619 discovery in the famous room with a stove, described in the method of 1637. As for the opinions I had received up to that time, I thought it better to make a clean sweep and throw them all away. Thus, seeing that our senses sometimes deceive us, I was ready to suppose that there was no such reality as they gave us images of, and because reason can err even in geometry, I rejected what before had seemed the surest proofs. Moreover, since such thoughts as come to us waking can also visit our sleep, I resolved to treat all that had entered my mind as no more real than the figments of my dreams. But in the act of thinking all was false, it came to me as necessary that I, who did that thinking, must be real. Thus observing that the truth, I think, therefore I am, was so certain that no extravagance of the skeptics could ever shake it, I took it boldly for the first principle of the philosophy I was in search of. By an axiomatic leap, the self Descartes discovers is not merely the doubter, dreamer, nightmarer, from whom little in the way of certainty could be deduced, but an eternal thinking substance, clear and sufficient assurance of God and causality, with its mathematical plotting of world, perception and all, along equational abscisses of space and time. All points of those curves which admit of precise measurement must bear some rapport to all points of a straight line, a relation which can be expressed by means of a single equation. If, then, we should take successively an infinite number of values for the line y, we should obtain an infinite number of values for the line x, and therefore an infinity of different points, such as C, by means of which the required curve could be drawn. In ordered infinitude, the landscape from this late Rubens through Ruysdael and Claude matches the science from Galileo to Huygens, Leibniz, and Newton. Descartes' system of the world must have been one of the proudest of these constructions. He burned it when Galileo was condemned, but a guarded summary appears in Book 5 of the Méthode. I showed how the greatest part of the matter in the original chaos must, in accordance with natural laws, dispose and arrange itself in such a way as to present the appearance of heavens, how in the meantime some of its parts must compose an earth, and some planets and comets, and others a sun and fixed stars. I next came to speak of the earth, and to show how mountains, seas, fountains, and rivers might naturally be formed in it, the metals produced in the mines, and plants grow in the fields, and in general how things purely material might in the course of time become such as we at present observe them. How far that looming space of thought takes us from the naive delight observation had opened for Jan van Eyck through a sacred loggia beyond the Virgin Anadonor's praying hands, or what giant intrepid will exchanged this magic kingdom for that weighty republic of cause. Galileo best states the axiom of material validity, which dignifies the new world, and which lifts the still life to an apotheosis of the actual, Spinoza's reality and perfection one and the same. Sagrado, Galileo's priest of establishment, has expressed the old weightless geometry where mere size cuts no figure. But it does not explain the physical, leaves it to reason's antagonist, the irrational imperfections of the material. Salviati saves us by incorporating the mathematical logos in the motions and forces of things, converting bondage into glory. But he can only redeem the physical by its idealization, since I assume matter to be unchangeable and always the same. It is that incarnate axiom which halos the tactility of a Thubaran goblet and bowl. Where a 1480 Memling chalice of St. John, as perfect in observation, abides in the mystery of symbol, the cup of that snake-fallen body Christ drank as second Adam, the same snake Moses raised on the rod to become the rood. At the climax of the whirl which led from spaceless hovering to material formulation, Bruno, burned in 1600 as Inquisition sapped the terminal freedom of Venice, acclaims himself hermetic seer of a God-irradiated universe. Daring as Tintoretto's charged effluvia of light, behold now the man who has pierced the air and penetrated the sky, who has broken down those imaginary divisions between spheres and thrown wide the doors of truth, stripping the veils and coverings from the face of nature. All those creatures who may not gaze upon the lights of heaven, but are destined to dwell in the infernal circles of Pluto's dark prison house, when they hear the dread summons of Electon's furious horn, spread wide their wings and veer away in rapid flight toward their abodes. But those who are born to see the sun, full of thanksgiving at the end of the loathsome night, dispose themselves to receive in the very center of their eyes' crystal globe the long-expected rays, and with unaccustomed gladness in their hearts lift up hands and voices to adore the East. Such the confidence of Vieta's Algebra, 1591. This universal mathematics enables us to attack the proud problem of problems, for there is no problem which cannot be solved. In music, that climax of kinetic late Renaissance, everywhere exploring polychoral and instrumental masses, chromatics, even recitative, what Monteverdi would establish as conscious Baroque, attends Giovanni Gabriele, Venetian teacher of 1600 Europe. With the old Harvard performance of his In Ecclesiis, our slides advance through Tintoretto to the final explosion of El Greco.